Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live from the Pillar Exterior stage here at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Welcome aboard to our friends over there at Pillar Exteriors. You'll be hearing a lot more from them.
Let's go Pillars.
That's our guy, DB.
Let's go Pillars.
The consummate cheerleader over there.
Well, usually I say Steelers, so Pillars is.
Hey, it's right there. It's right in the wheelhouse.
And I like when people want to put their names and give ownership to
It
things.
does. I also appreciate when they put their confidence in us.
Yeah,
they're attaching themselves to us.
I like that.
So shout out to our new friends over at Pillar Exteriors. We have a terrific show for you here today.
Would you like a little?
What do we got today? What are we working with?
Today we're working with a little Waterloo.
Oh yeah, you like the Waterloo? It's like a
just
sparkling water.
Yeah, I can get it real cheap over at Costco, and this is I call it Ryder. This is Zoe's favorite flavor.
Which one is that?
Orange Nilla. Just ask her.
Ooh, I like orange. I struggle with vanilla in drinks sometimes.
I struggle with orange, except for Gatorade. Like, this is not my jam. It just is part of the 8-pack, and I believe in drinking
the whole thing,
all the bad stuff.
Yeah.
So they've got another 3-pack where one of them is it's bad. Cherry limeade. I'm out on cherry limeade.
All cherry limeades or just that one?
Oh, all cherry limeades.
Oh, see,
it is the safest. I'm gonna say safe and overrated in the same sentence. Like, it's kind of Caleb's go-to as a flavor outside of grape, because of course he's basic and doesn't take a lot of chances. But it's awful. I don't know why people do what. What's the matter?
Why does Caleb like grape?
It's basic.
He likes the purple drink.
Yeah, whatever.
Shane, I don't know if you're allowed to say that. You might. Not trying to get Shane canceled over here.
No. So I'm going.
I'll mess around with some cherry limeade.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go over to the the local establishment, get some diet. I go diet cherry limeade so it doesn't mess with my blood sugars, but I'll mess around with that a little bit.
Yeah, I watched it. There's a guy on TikTok. I thought of you yesterday. Well, actually, I did this morning as the Dodgers are playing baseball. I'm like, I'm going to be 3 hours into my day, but I'm really not. Like 4. So
yeah.
3. Yeah, so 3 already.
Yeah.
But with the 5:05 opening pitch with the Dodgers against the Fathers, I was going to be extra excited. But there's this guy that comes. I don't know if it was because the food on my FYP or what, or restaurant reviews, but this guy who is diabetic talked about, is there a thing called True?
Yeah.
There's something. Okay, so maybe that's not what he said. I have to go back and watch it. But he takes something, he shook it up and he drank it, and he took his sugar reading or whatever. He showed everybody, but he actually pricked his finger.
Yeah.
I was like, do they still do that?
Oh,
it seems archaic. I didn't think that you still had to do that anymore.
I don't, because I have a continuous glucose monitor. But if you don't have one, then it's a continuous glucose monitor.
Oh,
it's this little.
I didn't hear the enunciation. He said teeth clicking.
Talking is hard. Yeah, it's a little thing that goes on my stomach that tells me what my blood sugar is. It checks it every couple minutes.
Oh, my punter, Marty Mormino, had one of those, I think.
Yeah, probably.
One of those little box things that like sticks on you.
So his might have been a pod, which is actually a type of pump. It's weird. I got all sorts of accessories attached to my body to make sure I don't die. But that's
my meal.
There's
some ladies on first dates. It's like, whoa, what?
There's a lot going on here.
What are Spanx? No. So it's like he takes these. He took this thing. He shook it up and he drank it. Like he slammed it, and then he's like, "No, we're gonna." He showed us his reading.
Yeah.
Then he ate at like a buffet in Vegas.
Yeah.
And then showed his reading to show that the medicine actually works. Like he literally gorged himself, and I didn't realize that the spiking was a thing. I thought because for me, it seems like you always want something extra.
Yeah, so it depends on, because in the mornings I do, because
what's the spike phenomenon?
So it happens when you basically eat any food or carbs, especially your blood sugar spikes. And so the insulin brings it back down. But in the mornings, since I haven't eaten since the night before, I usually need something to bring my blood sugar up a little bit. because I haven't eaten since 12 hours ago or whatever. So that sounds like a type 2 thing, though. Usually they can take oral medication that helps activate their insulin better, and so that's what that sounds like to me.
Yeah, he got it in, and I was mortified. I lost the fact that he was trying to educate us about diabetes, and I was floored by the fact he was eating gravy from a buffet line.
Yeah, that's aggressive.
Oh,
I'm kind of.
I gave me the willies.
I'm not gonna say I'm over buffets, but I'm past the time in my life where buffets really appealed to me.
Yeah, I'm not over it either. Like I would have to eyeball it and
Yeah,
stuff,
it'd have to be like really appealing.
But I'm not gonna be that guy that's gonna be. I don't eat buffets.
No, I'm not.
I mean, I would.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be that guy. I'm the guy that will gladly smash some chili salsa. Like I'll go and get
Let it explode all over your chest.
Oh, I'm not Nick Baugh. But no, so I'm not pretentious about that. Well, in that sense, I am in other ways for sure. But I used to like buffets more than I do
Can
now.
you just imagine the drippings and droppings that go in?
I don't want to do that.
Gravy.
I don't want to do that.
And then it gets the little skim on top.
No, I don't want to do that at all.
People just take those big old fat ladles and they just kind of like.
You trying to like make me a little nauseous on air here? Like I don't. That doesn't sound good to me.
But I just thought it was very interesting. So
when I was a kid,
I had questions this morning.
When I was a kid, though, I would smash some buffets, but there was a certain age where I was like, I'm going for the quality over the quantity here.
Yeah, cooking in bulk is just difficult.
It is. It's really hard to do. It's really hard to do well. Shout out to my wife who does that for a living, is really good at it.
Shout out to your wife. There are a lot of people as we're watching the
We've got
Los
live
Angeles
baseball on.
Yeah, you are looking live in the Soul series here with the Dodgers and the Fathers. And
the Soul Sisters, like Train.
Speaking of which, there are a lot of ladies drinking beer being panned in the cameras. I mean, just getting it in. And again, it's not 5 a.m. there, which is why it's 5 a.m. here, because it is.
That's time zones.
Yeah.
It's funny how those work.
Shane.
You decided if you like me yet this morning?
Shane, get your guy.
To this day.
Yes.
Listen, I'm not Trev. You don't have to come out in the streets and get me.
Wow. Too early for that.
Never too early. We got a good show coming up for you today. At 8 o'clock, we got Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. At 8:30, we've got our guy Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. At 9, we've got Kerry Miller from Bleacher Report covering college basketball. Did a little surprise for you. At 9:30, we've got D-Rock, Coach Darian DeVries of your Drake Bulldogs.
Surprise!
They'll be in town here. They're probably in town now. They'll kick off their NCAA tournament here in Omaha.
Did us a solid.
Oh, for sure. With our guy D-Rock, we love some D-Rock.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's I know you have a specific affinity for him.
I'm not gonna get into that old blind patch.
That's okay. It's all right.
But I do like. I am a big D-Rock guy. Good man.
Yeah. So we'll talk to D-Rock at 9:30 as they get ready for the NCAA tournament. Speaking of the NCAA tournament,
Shane, over under on times I comment on the baseball game, and it has nothing to do with what we're talking about on the show.
To this day.
3.5.
I'm gonna try to control myself.
3.5.
3.5.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I'm competitive. I'm gonna really try to.
That's pretty low.
That is gonna be tough. So, like,
I mean, we've only got 2 innings left. We're in the top 7 here.
Okay, it's really 3 innings, but
it's fine.
2 1/3.
I mean, there's 2 outs already, so I think if I can read that right, I don't know. I can't read from here. This is great radio, by the way. Just watching the baseball game on the air. No, I want to talk about the NCAA tournament, if you can even call it that, of what we saw last night.
They fanned your flames.
From the Virginia Cavaliers.
Yeah, they fanned
team that, an argument could be made, did not belong in that position. I think a really easy argument could be made.
It's bad basketball.
That they did not belong in that position. Maybe because they were 18 spots lower in the metrics than any other at-large team, and there were somewhere in the neighborhood of half a dozen teams that did not make the tournament. Sorry, more than that. Probably closer to a full dozen that didn't make the tournament, that were ahead of them in the metrics. And I would just like to know, I'd like to sit down with the committee and be like, okay, so what did they pass? Because it certainly wasn't the eye test. We know that.
Yeah.
Could not have passed an eye test of anyone that is at.
I think Virginia Tech took their soul. They blew
that
them.
Was
They blew them out about a month ago.
I would say that was like 6 weeks ago.
And like they've never recovered. I bet you they're since that Virginia Tech game. I bet you they're like 4-8 or something like that. 5.
I can look it up, because we have computers here.
Wait, is that what we're doing? Are we Googling already?
I'm always Googling.
What is this, Google?
They didn't even have 8 games. They lost to Virginia Tech. They beat.
What was the Virginia Tech final? It's like 30, right?
75-41.
Okay.
There's a lot of 40s on the scoreboard here for Virginia.
Mhm.
That's a problem.
Yeah, well, they shoot a much lower percentage than they score in total points.
Yes, it's bad.
You know what they shot last night from the floor?
It's like 25%.
Yeah, do you know what they shot from 3?
I did 12.
17.
Yeah, I was just guessing, but
It was unbelievable. Like they couldn't even get stickbacks.
And Colorado State wasn't defending that well.
They couldn't
Virginia was-
get little putbacks.
Virginia was open a lot.
The very first basket that Virginia scored was on a tough turnaround on the baseline after like 3 minutes, and I'm like,
that's not sustainable.
It's not going to make a lot of those.
Yeah, he was double teamed on the baseline, fade away.
Yeah,
incredible shot. Not going to get to 60 points on those possessions.
It's really, really bad basketball.
It was horrifying. They went, I'm sure you've seen this by now, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's horrifying. They went almost a full hour of real time without making a shot.
Well, they stuck on, was it 14 or 17?
14 points.
Yeah.
From the end of the first half into the beginning of the second half, it was 52 minutes of real time. You could have played an actual basketball game in the amount of real time that Virginia did not put the ball in the hoop.
It's a bad basketball team.
Which leads me to the question.
No, don't do it.
I'm going to do it.
Don't do it. I know what you're going to say.
I have to ask the question.
It's not a reflection of him.
How is it not a reflection of him? It's his team.
What's the question?
Are we sure Tony Bennett's good?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Oh.
I have been, listen.
What do they do? Oh, shoot. That's
one. Let me give context here, okay?
Isn't that 3?
Let me give context.
First of all, he said it at 3.5. That's just 1. But, like, what are those people doing?
That's 2.
It's over the same thing.
I'm calling 2.
Wow. How many innings left?
About 2.5.
It's going to be tough.
So, I let me give some context here. I have been a big Tony Bennett fan for a very long time.
You're not talking about the performer, are you?
No.
Okay.
R.I.P.
Shane dead?
Yeah, he was the last one.
Okay.
He's pretty recently, I think, within the last year, I want to say.
Yep.
I mean, I'm going back to like Washington State. I remember a Washington State game back in like 2006. So that had been his first year there, 2006, 2007, where me and my buddy, who were very legally gambling on a lot of college basketball at that time, loved Tony Bennett because he always covered. Well, that was before our guy Lee Terry made it illegal to do on the internet.
Former Northwest grad, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, if he could have just not messed with the online gambling, that'd have been terrific.
Shout out Lee Terry.
It's literally the only thing I know that he did in Congress. He probably did other stuff.
Wow.
I'm sure he did other stuff. That's just the only thing I know about because it affected me directly. He did come and talk.
You were like 12.
He did come and talk to my. No, I was old enough to gamble on the internet. He did come and talk to my civics class once.
Like Jodeci?
And that was one of the at that point I was like, I mean, I don't know Lee Terry at all, but I remember thinking as like a 17-year-old, I was like, oh, if this guy can make Congress,
come and talk to me.
I could do that.
I really want to meet. Yeah.
I've thought about, not now, but there was a time where I thought about running for Congress because if you get 3 consecutive terms, it's only 6 years, you get benefits for life.
I used to want to do that.
I just wanted the pension and the medical insurance for life. I'll do whatever.
Yeah, I wasn't smart enough to think about things like that.
That's all I was thinking about.
I just thought I could affect change more than actually it really does.
Yeah, I was not under that delusion. I was just like, you know what? The pension and medical care for 6 years of work sounds pretty good.
So
anyway, but Tony Bennett.
If I fall out of this chair and maybe have some sort of
that counts as 2.
No,
yes.
No, it doesn't.
If it disrupts the show, that counts.
If I fall out of this chair, have some sort of an aneurysm or an embolism.
Yeah, don't have either of those.
It will be from trying not to comment on what's going on because I am on the struggle bus right now, not saying anything about this game.
You're already at 1.5. So,
What's that?
Tony Bennett, though, I'm going back all the way because he used to cover all the time.
Yeah.
He always covered. And he was the first coach that I saw. I'm not saying he's the first to do it. He's the first coach that I saw that started fouling with like 6 minutes left because he knew he couldn't get back in the game any other way. He knew that they were a terrible free throw shooting, and I was mesmerized by it. Just his willingness to do something kind of wacky. So he started fouling with about 6 minutes left. You okay? You doing all right?
I'm just focused on fouling with 6 minutes left.
It doesn't seem like you're paying attention to that at all.
I can
No big deal.
And so I kind of became enamored with Tony Bennett. So when he goes to Virginia, I was like, oh, it's a great hire for Virginia. Terrific move. I have opined openly for several years.
It's a big word.
That Wisconsin is out of their GD mind for not giving him a phone call before they're like, here you go, Greg Gard. Here are the keys. You don't want to call the guy whose dad coached there and he grew up there and he just won a national championship. You don't want to make that phone call? That's not a call you want to make? Okay, cool.
So how did we arrive at a guy that you had a lot of respect for where now you're questioning whether he can coach?
I'll tell you.
Or is this one of those? I'm glad you asked.
I am glad you asked. So it was really easy to write off the UMBC thing as a fluke.
Yeah.
Right? Because they come back, they win the national championship the next year. Right? Before that,
I was with my guy.
He had a lot of success. He was Sweet 16, Elite 8, national champion in a 6-year span, right? Since then, they had the COVID year, bounced in round 1, NIT, bounced in round 1, bounced in the first 4. I don't want to just go by NCAA results, but that's the accuracy of it. They have not won a tournament game since they won a national championship. We're going on 5 years now. Here's my problem. It's not the results themselves. It's how bad it has looked since 2019. He seems as though he's completely either lost the ability or the interest of coaching the offensive side of the basketball.
He doesn't have anybody that can shoot, so he's got to recruit better, right?
I'll say that's part of his job, though, right?
Yeah,
like
100%.
I'm not going to separate the fact that he doesn't have anybody that can score the ball.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's the one in charge of finding the guys that can score the ball, right?
Fair.
Because the only reason that team won the title is because they had DeAndre Hunter, they had Kyle Guy, they had Ty Jerome, they had a group of guys that actually could play offensive basketball. He does not seem to have recruited any of those guys since then. I know he tried to get our guy Trout, had him for a minute. Trout was like, "Nah, I'm good. I'm going home." Right? Like that's the only guy I've seen that he's recruited in the last 5 years that can shoot the basketball at all. I have to wonder if my guy lost his fastball because you've seen it before. It would be the first time that somebody reaches the mountaintop and then falls off.
Yeah.
Right?
That's fair, but he's a really good coach, though.
I have always thought that he is – I don't know how a really good coach allows what we saw last night to happen for multiple years in a row. That's where I struggle, just being totally honest. If I saw that one single time –
L2 out on Tony Bennett.
If I saw that one single time, I would tear everything to the ground and start over.
Let alone 2.
Let alone 5 years in a row.
Yeah.
And 6 of the last 7.
So I think last night was the first time that a lot of people that aren't ACC dorks actually kind of dialed in.
Yeah, the internet was not impressed with Virginia.
It's a really but
you just know.
Yeah, I was laughing because
you're like, this is Virginia.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Like, this is just Virginia.
This is really what they do. But a lot of times what they weren't doing last night is they get a lot of those little garbage putbacks and kind of those little tough hangers in the lane, and they just weren't going in last night. And they don't at any point look like good shots.
No, even when they're open, you're just like, that's not going in.
Yeah.
And they're open a lot. I really struggle to see this many in a row.
I'll be curious to see what you think of Clemson. They'll probably play well and then be like, and DB doesn't know what he's talking about.
I've only seen Clemson like twice this year.
But a lot of people will be dialed into that game because
New Mexico's an easy upset.
Will be a trendy pick.
Yeah, because they're an actual favorite,
and they're favored.
Game. Yeah. So yeah, I think we need to maybe reevaluate on our guy here a little bit.
Speaking of evaluations, were you surprised at the quick turnaround on the contract extension for Coach Hoiberg?
I was a little bit, considering there's no president and no AD right now, or interim at least.
I think that thing was pretty much in place.
I think so. There was also a tidbit, I don't remember where I saw it, somewhere on the internet, that Amy Williams' extension is in the works as well.
Yeah, well earned.
Which, by the way, let me just say, if you're one of the people that thinks that the Trev thing was about the lawsuit, Amy Williams would not be getting a contract extension.
I agree with you.
Right? I mean, you said she wouldn't still be coaching, and that's
and
totally
I think
fair.
I said that off air that morning. I was like, would you guys quit with the lawsuit thing? Because she wouldn't still be coaching. Now, maybe he didn't want to settle.
Yes.
But because I don't think he wanted to admit any wrongdoing.
Which
right?
any lawyer worth his salt is not letting you settle and take fault.
So,
like that's...
Well, I think that's probably something they had to parse through. Put that on the list. It was probably one of the 4 or 5 things, right?
And maybe the other side of the lawsuit is insisting on fault be taken to settle.
Yeah.
Like that might be a thing.
Ooh, sounds like a lot of legalese. Good on us. Or you said it. I knew it. You said it. I agreed.
But yeah,
I felt like Keith Lee doing a food review. I got it. I got it. Let's get it.
Were you
Let's try
chewing
it.
with your mouth open in front of a microphone?
No, but
you got to cover your mouth, but it does not stop the sound of him chewing at all.
I think that's a prerequisite for food reviews.
I hate it.
I think you have to chomp into.
Don't chomp into your microphone.
And somehow all these people.
It makes me want to throw my phone.
All these people are on my.
That's because all you look at is recipes
and lift and like workouts
and the serial killers, whether animals or real or people.
Hey, so follow Ocean Blue.
Dude, I got on North Sea TikTok. It's scary.
Oh,
yeah, it's terrifying. The ocean is horrifying.
It is.
It's the scariest thing in the world. I don't know what we're doing.
It is. I mean, it's probably the.
You could tell me anything about the ocean.
We probably know more about space than we do 100%. The ocean.
You could tell me anything about the ocean, and I'd believe it.
Yeah,
like you could be like, "There's actually a group of lizard people that live in the Marianas Trench," and I'd be like, well, "Probably." I mean, what else do the giant squids eat? You know, what am I gonna do then?
Back to the contract extension.
Yeah, we'll get to more. We've got maybe a new president name coming out today for Nebraska as well. We'll get to that and all that and more on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and live from the Pillar Exteriors studio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are watching some early morning baseball here.
That has to do. Well, this would have to do with what's going on the show.
If I comment on it, you're allowed to continue that conversation. Okay. You don't have to sit there in silence.
Good to see the Dodgers have runners on first and second, and maybe they can score.
Jeez. Well, hopefully they didn't watch that Virginia game last night, because if they did, they certainly will not score.
Yeah, you and Ryan are in agreement.
That was listen.
My man went with pure filth.
Terrible basketball, and it's been that way for half a decade now. Yeah. It sounds more dramatic when you say half a decade
as opposed to 5 years.
Yeah. You're like half a decade, DB.
Yes, that's a big there, boy.
So childish.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I understand.
At a certain point,
I'm not as blown away by it. I watch it all the time. Unfortunately,
I know, but just because
I watched them go like 8 minutes against Duke without scoring a basketball, and they were down like 9. I couldn't figure it out. Well, I could not figure it out.
I love it last night in the second half, where the play-by-play guy, whose name escapes me right now,
Spinarkle?
Yes, Jim Spinarkle.
Yeah,
he was there with Spiro Dita. Ditas. Not Adidas, just Ditas.
Correct.
Yeah, our guy Spinarkle goes, and all of a sudden it's a 15-point game with like 10 minutes left in the second half. Like, he didn't just watch him go.
Well, when it got to 8, you thought this was insurmountable.
Yes. Yeah. As soon as Virginia gets down by like 3 possessions, I'm like, well, that's the ball game.
Yeah.
But he goes, all of a sudden it's a 15-point game. Like you're watching North Carolina, who can actually score the basketball, and not Virginia, who we just watched score 14 points in an entire half.
I'm not here for the low-key North Carolina slander either.
That wasn't slander.
I feel like it may have who can actually score the ball. Is this relative to Virginia or just in general?
In general, they could put up some buckets.
Well, I need a little more context.
Would you rather I use like Alabama? Like they could fill it up a little bit.
They're in trouble.
They can't stop anybody.
Yeah, these SEC teams.
Should Nate Oates and Tony Bennett just like have a summit and trade notes?
There are a lot of people that had some opening jobs that were clamoring for Nate Oates.
I think he's an okay basketball coach. I think he recruits well. I like that he brought on our guy Preston.
Yeah, he was a hot commodity too. I thought he was going to end up in Georgetown. I thought the minute June 1 hit and that show clause
expired,
ran its course.
Yeah, which was nonsense, by the way.
I thought he was. Turns out, I thought it was going to go. I thought he was going with our guy at Georgetown.
Oh, our guy Ed Cooley.
Yes, not really my guy.
No, you're not a big Ed Cooley guy.
I came around on him.
You probably shouldn't have.
Well, a lot of you guys were just on me about how you, DeMarinis, Ball. I'm like, okay, I get it, but I don't.
I think he does a really good job getting the most out of players that kind of fit his roster but aren't necessarily super high-level players.
Oh, great. Love the long 18-sentence quantifiers.
Hey.
Form an opinion, would you?
I think he's fine.
Okay.
I think he's fine.
Gee, man. Well, I like those guys that get like those lefties out of the bullpen as situational managers that can
we can either be specific
they can throw
or we can be
inning,
general.
And then they
like
can
Pat
come back
like
with
Neshek
with a right-hander that just shoves. And man, I like those situational. Well, we all would, Ravi. We all would.
You a big Pat Neshek guy?
No, I did not like the delivery, and he's gonna have his arm's gonna hurt when he gets older.
I mean, I think most baseball players' arms are gonna.
No, but he had the
submarine deal. Actually, that they say that's better on your arm than throwing overhand.
Is it?
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
I don't even recognize what we're doing here.
He's done it again.
Coming up at 8:00. Besides talking to Brian Christopherson, the Nebraska Board of Regents is meeting to give or to, I guess, finalize, decide how to announce.
Maybe somehow that we in the media said that. I don't know if that's what the.
There's a report from the Lincoln Journal-Star, so that's where I'm taking it.
Is that my man Chris Dunker?
Yes, it was the dunker, the dunker spot.
He does a really good job.
It's too bad that
How much do you think he slept?
Isn't a sports writer, because a dunker spot would be like the perfect blog, column, podcast name for him. That's okay.
Yeah, he's done.
No, but he's terrific at what he does.
Tremendous amount of work.
And he reported yesterday that the Board of Regents is expected to announce a priority candidate for the Nebraska president's job today. I believe they're scheduled to meet at 8 a.m. So, I'm connecting some dots here for you, but they're meeting at 8 a.m. We have the report from our guy, Chris Dunker. I'm assuming that sometime during that 8 a.m. meeting, they will decide to announce this name, a priority candidate, which I think we're dealing with a couple possible different scenarios here. Okay. Either one, this was already in the works prior to last Wednesday, and they're just now, it's just kind of coincidental. Not coincidental is the wrong word. The timing is what it was always going to be, and that's part of the reason why Trev left, right? Is that a fair conclusion to what could be a possibility? The other possibility, which I haven't heard as many people talk about, is maybe they were getting close, and the governor kind of kicked him in the rear a little bit. Is that possible?
Possible.
That there was like, hey, there's a couple names here. The governor has this call to action. It's like, hey, let's go. And they're like, all right, let's make a decision. Like, that's on the table, right? I think we'll have an idea based on who the name is, which one of those played out.
What if they really threw you a curveball and announced like Kaborik is like
just permanent?
Permanent.
I don't know how much of a curveball that would be for me, just because I don't
think that would happen, but
I don't know how he's viewed.
I don't either.
Internally or externally, so I don't know how much of a surprise that would be. I would be less surprised, I think, if they named LeBlanc the permanent AD or the temporary, like the permanent AD, but I don't expect that to be a long-term position.
That would just be extremely difficult to pull off with academics.
Sure.
It would be
because that's his wheelhouse, right?
Extremely difficult.
So he'd have to find.
And I don't even know if academics is going over in the new facility. Like, that would be hard.
There's some logistics there that would make it challenging.
Yeah.
But so there's a name that I think a lot of people are familiar with that Trev was sort of known to want at the president spot, and that's Jeffrey Gold from UNMC.
Dr. Gold, correct.
Yeah, Dr. Gold. He is currently the chancellor at UNMC. I think I feel like if that's the name that comes out, which I think is possible still, I don't know. I almost feel like they'd be doing it, not entirely despite Trev, but that's not off the table, is it?
Well, I think he didn't have enough of the prerequisite votes, right? I think he was only going to have about 2 of the 5. But the real key is you have to figure out what you're going to do with bridging the university systems, right? Because obviously I don't think UNMC here in Omaha wants to share those research dollars. And so if you're talking about like AAU status, I mean, would you go as far as to put them on, could you do UNMC on like a Lincoln campus, your own version?
Yeah, like a remote or a satellite.
Yeah,
satellite campus.
Because I don't know enough about the process and the splitting of those dollars. I just know that the research dollars, like that's got to be a sticking point.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're going to relinquish,
they're not going to want to share those.
Yeah. If you're going to relinquish your AAU status, you have to figure out how to get all the university systems under one umbrella. Because right now, as it stands, you're the only school in the Big Ten
that doesn't have that
is not of AAU status. And we used to kind of thumb our nose at it. I remember we had Harvey Perlman in studio a long, long time ago. And he kind of poo-pooed it, made some efforts, this, that, and the other. I mean, he was extremely smart, by far and away the smartest guy in that room. But the thing about it is whether you think it's important or not, I just don't know if you want to be the only. I just had this I was talking to AC yesterday.
Yeah.
We talked for a long time about this, right? I'm like, and he's very familiar with, the processes and the legal works and the infrastructures with the university systems. And I'm like, Adam, I just don't think you want to be the only, right? 17 out of the 18. So you have to figure that out too, which may or may not complicate matters. Because if we're getting back to the athletics and the front door and this, that, and the other, well, by the way, there's this status that I think that we better get back to if we're looking to really be like everybody else in the Big Ten from a positional standpoint. Maybe that's what Trev was talking about.
Not being left behind.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point for sure. Coming up next, we will wrap up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and we're live from the Pillar Exterior Studio. SDB, I'm Ravi Lulla, and I want to remind you that you can go to supernovas.com to get tickets to the March 28th match against the Grand Rapids Rise. That is a week from tomorrow. So you don't have to worry about missing, your basketball games or anything like that this weekend. Go next week and see the Omaha Supernovas. Go check out the schedule, get some merchandise, or purchase tickets directly on supernovas.com. So jumping back into the president conversation a little bit here. I think so we mentioned the name Dr. Gold from UNMC, which I think is a legitimate candidate. I don't know if there was enough to overcome the initial opposition. Maybe that's where the governor's call to action comes in and says, hey, like, let's get over our differences here. This is a qualified guy that can come and do this job. Or maybe they go in a different direction, a direction that one Trevor Alberts didn't love, and that's part of the reason he moved on. I don't know what that looks like. I do know there's a name out there that I don't know if it's rumored or reported or anything like that. It's just kind of a guy that I know of that has done this job before in multiple locations and has Nebraska ties, and that's Ben Sass.
Yeah, but they can't. So the thing about, excuse me, I was talking about this with Adam yesterday. The thing about SAS is you have to have gone through the process.
Mhm.
And I don't think SAS would be in a position, being at the University of Florida,
To go
to
through
have,
the
to have
process.
been through the process.
That's fair.
So I don't think that name can come up.
Okay, that's fair.
Do you know what I mean?
I guess what all does the process entail? Because
So
I don't know.
That's like, it's probably screening.
Yeah, sure.
And then I think there's an internal straw vote.
Okay.
I
I guess what about being at Florida would have prevented that?
Because I don't think,
Mhm.
unless you're for sure getting that job, you go through the process when you're currently the sitting
President
president
somewhere else.
someplace else.
Just because you can't keep it a secret,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. I just
Right.
didn't know if there was like logistics of he'd have to be here too much. Like I didn't know logistically if there was an issue or if it's just you probably don't want your current employer knowing you're looking for other jobs.
Yeah, so I think that's part of it.
Okay.
Because
I know the reason I brought him up partially, besides his connections to the state, and he's got experience doing this job, including at a Power 5 school, which is not something we could have said about Trev when he was hired, was the fact that
now you're talking about as an athletic director or as a president?
Well, as an athletic director, he didn't have the
Yeah.
Power 5 experience coming to Nebraska. Obviously, president's a little bit different job here. But the other thing about SAS that maybe kind of tickled my brain a little bit here is I know the decision to hire him was not terribly popular at the University of Florida. So maybe it's not been a comfortable situation for him, and that's the reason that I thought maybe it makes sense for him to go someplace where he won a couple of elections by pretty healthy margins, where he might be a little bit better received than he was at Florida. Because there were protests when he got chosen as the guy down in Florida. So,
yeah,
but that's just me.
I think
Connecting dots. I don't have any information.
Try to stick to sports, but I think as a moderate, which is kind of his policy, maybe wasn't received all that well at Florida.
Yeah, I think there were some issues with his stances that they didn't love, which is again, that's
to sports.
I mean, we're not taking a stance on it. That's what happened.
Listen, you know me. I'm kidding.
A guy from Nebraska went to be
you talk about whatever you want to.
Went to be the president at University of Florida, and there were protests about it. Like that's a real thing that happened. I'm not making it up.
Still tastes like aluminum.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's in a can.
That's the downside of cans.
Yeah.
Is there an aluminum shortage? Because it's awful expensive.
They said that there was during COVID. I don't know if there still is.
That was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. It was almost as long ago as when Tony Bennett looked like a functional basketball coach. But COVID was actually more recent than that because that was a year before.
Wow.
For Tony Bennett. I'm just, it's worth bringing up some, I think.
You and Ryan, do you guys feel a certain way about Virginia?
I mean, I'm mad that they were included, so I'm gonna bury them now that they just pooped the bed on TV.
Oh, I'm telling you, the team that you ought to take a look at. It wasn't even St. John's. It was Pittsburgh.
I thought Pittsburgh looked really good in the ACC tournament.
It's a good team.
I kept watching them and thinking they were a different team because they looked better.
I bet you
I was expecting.
I could be wrong because this is totally off the top, but I bet you Capel is. I bet he's 4 games over 500 against Carolina.
Oh, just against Carolina?
Yeah.
And again, I wasn't trying to clamor for another Power 5 team to get in. I wanted Indiana State to get in. And that's fine. That's just gonna be my thing. That's fine.
Are you gonna be all right? You seem very hurt right
now. No, I'll be okay, probably.
Can I go back to the contract extension without an athletic director and a president?
You can go back to whatever you want.
So the people, I was surprised to hear this a little bit last night. It was, well, it's just after 1 year, right? But it's really not. Like if you look at the totality of what he did last year, the 3 or 4 different phases of that season, the trajectory.
Yeah, I thought he did an incredible job last year.
It's unbelievable.
That team had no business making it to 500.
Right?
None at all. That should have been a disaster.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure, like, we were clear on the job that was done last year for what it was, and this year, which is obvious because of the metrics and the numbers that you could see. So
absolutely,
I think think a lot of it was just based on the direction and the trend that the basketball team was moving in.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's more about the overall trend of the program than it is one specific year. That's what I assumed. If you look at the Hoiberg extension and just think it's based on this year, then you're just not paying attention.
Yeah, and how about some stability?
Yeah, stability is nice. It's helpful.
Yeah,
people gravitate towards stability.
100%.
The other thing about the extension with Hoiberg is you kind of had to do something with him, right? Because the conversation after last offseason or last offseason, I think it was kind of just a, hey, let's sort of reset here. Let's see how things go.
Mhm.
You had to do something this offseason.
Yeah.
Either you were going to keep him or you had to start thinking about moving on. Obviously, they weren't going to move on, so an extension was warranted. And I think it basically just takes him back to where he was before, or a little bit. He got a little bit of a bump, right? He's at 4.2.
Yeah,
and he was at 3.5 before.
Almost another mil.
Yeah, so I think he was at 3.5.
You're very welcome, Coach. Fantastic work.
I think it was at
just
3.5
today.
He wasn't talking to me.
I don't think so. I think he was at 3.5 before the kind of the restructuring conversation was Trev. Now he's up to 4.25 with scheduled raises. I mean, he basically just got back on track to where he was supposed to be. So I didn't look at the extension as some crazy thing, as like, oh wow, like they had already put their faith in Hoiberg. He rewarded that. They had to do something. That to me wasn't a big deal at all. What was kind of funny and a big deal, as we have a few minutes here before we talk to Brian Christopherson, was Iowa football got kicked in the nuts a little bit yesterday.
This is a big deal.
Oh, with the T-shirt on.
No, well, I was talking about Caden Proctor.
I can't believe that.
What's happening there?
So
Proctor from Iowa goes to Bama, transfers from Bama, goes back to Iowa, leaves Iowa before spring football, goes back to Bama.
You'd think I would know this. Is there a new coach caveat that allows him to not have to sit to go back to the same school?
So I don't know. What I do know is currently, because of the injunction that was placed in by the courts, multiple transfers can play right away.
Yeah.
So I don't know
so
if
we're still waiting on the injunction.
So I don't know if that's the provision he's going back under, or if there is, since he didn't ever actually participate technically in football activities, that he never really played for Iowa. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't understand. I didn't get it.
And I don't know what.
And how about, the crazy thing is like they were more than willing to welcome him back with open arms after being spurned the first time.
Yeah. I wonder how they feel about him now.
Because I mean, I know a ton of Iowa. It was like, okay, like,
you kind of get it though, right? Like you get, hey, we're Iowa, that's Bama. Like you understand it.
A little.
Right.
Yeah, but did I tell you, like, he was on the same visit that we were on, and it was somebody. I said, I can't believe they made people that size in high school.
Yeah,
like he was an unbelievably huge person,
enormous human being
to be in high school, and I'm like, and you could just tell he was a priority, right?
Sure.
And for them to like fool me once, right? Because I think it was a little bit of a struggle probably for some Iowa fans, but like, hey, listen, man, in the grand scheme of things, young kid, it's Bama, can help us win games. You're from here, welcome you back.
Absolutely.
This time, ooh boy,
he might have a hard time going home.
I couldn't believe it. I increased the font just to make sure that
you're reading it right.
I was reading it right.
Yeah, because it initially came out that he's transferring, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I don't know,
and then what happened?
That's what I want to know, right? Like, what happened that led him to
Iowa self-reported, and it was a minor infraction.
Tampering deal.
Yeah, it was much ado about nothing.
Not a big deal, right? But what happened where he goes from leaving Alabama? Now, I thought leaving Alabama might have been a little hasty because the board had been there like 4 minutes.
He just didn't. And listen, I don't know the type. I just, like, in words,
he
just didn't strike me as a guy that would love being there anyway.
At Bama?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
He was super quiet, super reserved. And again, it's not like I'm with him. I mean, I'd only seen him for 5 hours. So I don't know. I'm just trying to formulate some opinions on his personality. So I thought, oh, okay, maybe he just wants to come back to his roots.
Yeah, apparently not. Apparently not. That was not. I don't know what happened.
And how could he know he was going back to Bama without Bama having said something to him?
Without Bama having also tampered.
You think?
I mean, that's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. Coming up next, we've got Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, live from the Pillar Exterior studio. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's DB. We're joined now by Brian Christopherson, a Husker 24/7. BC, what's going on?
A lot's going on. That's good. It's all right.
B sizzle. So where are you starting, right? You guys have to kind of divvy this up, and you're going to get fed through another fire hose this morning with more information on the heels of spring ball. Like, how are you divvying this up?
Brunson's coming by here about half hour after I get done on this segment, and we're going to Pro Day. Pro Day's at 10 over at Lincoln. And then we've got the rental. We're driving to Memphis all day today, and we'll get there about midnight, I guess. And then tomorrow, Nebraska, I think there's shoot-arounds at like 2 o'clock, or that's when the media is. It's something like that, 2 in the afternoon. So I'm looking forward to it. It's been a nice change up to my senses with basketball and their success the last couple months and sort of the ride. So this will be fun.
So I don't know, what's the drive to Memphis? 10 hours? 9?
9.5, I think.
It said like 10. We'll go for 9.5 though, Ravi. We could do it. I think Bruns has a little bit of steel in his shoe, I think. So we'll see how that goes.
Is Bruns the type of guy that has to be driving?
No. He's probably a little better driver than me. Not surprising because he seems like he's very studious and all that, and he is like he's one of those you don't expect to make a big mistake on the road. So I prefer when he's at the wheel, and I think he does, but he will give it up. So we're good. We're a good team on the road. Usually, we like a good gas station stop. Like, we love it. We both don't hurry each other as we kind of pick our items that we want. It's about a 10 to 15 minute stop, and there's no pressure to get rolling again. So that's, I think, one of the most important things about a road trip partner.
Oh, that is fantastic. Hopefully one of you guys is good with the whole peanut sesame stick, kind of some sort of ensemble there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Where you're kind of like sitting next to the guy driving, and you're like, please don't wipe your hands on your thigh, but that does look good. But are you going to eat that out of the bag? Where you have all these little mini dilemmas when you travel a ton.
Well, the thing I do is a very selfish act is I will get the Cool Ranch Doritos, which is like
so you don't mind finger residue.
Yeah. That in your breath just is, terrible to like the whole car just it's a joke. But I sort of am like, this is all about me. I want my Cool Ranch. So we're both Cheez-Its guys. I think Damon's a Cheez-Its guy.
There you go. 100%.
I love a good Cheez-It.
Yeah.
Extra toasty. Best invention ever.
So anyway, that's what we're doing.
I go pretty hard on the Gardetto's chips as well.
I make my own, BC. I get sesame sticks. I go with dry roasted peanuts, Cheez-Its, or Goldfish, and smoked almonds.
Yeah.
And I kind of do my own. Sometimes I'll throw in the wasabi peas.
Oh, my wife loves those.
But I'm particular on my snack mix, but I am a big snack mix guy.
Mm-hmm. Do you have your own little like travel bowl? It's like just special for that. You kind of shake it up.
Listen, unfortunately, I do. I have I bought a packet. That's so funny. He said that. I have like these Glad storage containers.
Yeah.
And it sits on the drive. It sits right below, in between my legs on the floor when I drive. Because I mean, we're all over the place in the summers.
Yeah.
And I take that. It's like my to-go snack mix thing. I'm notorious for it.
That's fine with me. I understand it. I mean, I don't do it, but I understand it.
BC, Matt Norlander put out his bracket of coaches that have their favorite music.
That was hilarious.
What are the tunes like in the car with Bruns? I mean, I know sports writers are famously Springsteen guys, but what are we listening to?
Bruns, he's like Steely Dan or somebody, right?
No.
You know what? I don't know what he actually prefers. I think he kind of blends towards what we both could accept. And so we go to like a 90s station sort of on XM, which is now unfortunately like oldies. Like when I was a kid,
like Third Eye Blind and
yeah,
20, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, stuff like that. I'd go fight. We don't have to do this in this segment. Sometime when it's slower, we could fight through decades on what's the best and what's the worst. But I have a lot of strong takes that the 90s era holds up fine. And it's, very eclectic and all that stuff. So that's where we sort of sit most of the time, but we'll mix it up. We get some oldies in there. We get some there's a little hip hop once in a while when we got to pick up the beat. It's all over the place.
BC, so when you're headed there, we talked to KP yesterday, Kent Pavelka, and he was you could feel the emotion, kind of the gravity of the moment of Nebraska having this opportunity to get off the schneid, to not have your name on that tagline.
He seemed anxious.
Is that more the fandom, or do you think there is some of that heading into Memphis?
It's more the fandom, but it's a pretty savvy group over there. Obviously anyone would hear the storyline, but it's one that I think embraces the storyline, and they talk about it. Fred has said it's not something they run from. They know the historical context of what they could do Friday and how much it would mean. And that's the old pressure is a privilege line comes up. Hoiberg said that last week. I think they're just sort of like, yeah, let's put this on us and have that be something we want to carry. And we want to be that team that, like, it seems exaggerating, but it's not, like, win Friday. And they're the type of team that 20, 25 years from now, like on a Saturday afternoon in January, is being recognized, and everybody's like, oh yeah, I remember that how they broke through and all that stuff. Like you are etched in the stone a bit just by winning this one game Friday. And so you can't escape that. And I think when there's certain things that you can't escape, why try to? That's what I would say. It's out there. Everybody knows it, that's the thing. So I think that part, they're very in tune with wanting to be the group that breaks through. I do think the other thing that I'll just go through it quick, because we haven't made it about the Trev Alberts thing, but I just don't think they care, the players themselves, about that. I would say that too. Like, that's not something. They're just focused on, like, how do you stop Anderson Garcia from getting 10 boards in this game? That sort of thing. Like, you're like so in a box with like what you have to do with your scout and certain guys on the floor. That's like a little side thing for everybody else, but I do not see that being something that gets in the way of the coaches and players this week.
I do think it was cool, because I felt the same way. And I've done this with some other things where we make it about the adults as opposed to the game. And I did love the fact that Coach Rule said, I'm a little bit angry, but primarily because it's not necessarily the matchup. It's because we're going to make it about something other than the kids, right? And that's rule 101, right? With an H. It's not about the things that you can't control. So let the kids, young people get mad at me when I say kids, let the student athletes have their moment, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's probably up to us to make sure that we don't make that the storyline, because I agree with you 100%, BC. The kids, the student athletes, the young people won't.
Yeah,
they won't make it about that at all.
Rule made two big points in one there. He made his feelings known on the matchups, and also it was connected to whether this could have happened if you had someone in that chair or not. I don't know, but the idea that whoever is the next AD has to be that type of person that has the cachet or whatever it takes, the voice to carry through when certain things could be happening that pit your university in a weird situation, that says, no, what's going on here? Has that voice at the table. So he was telling two big thoughts in one there, which it was a very accomplished first 12 and a half minutes, I would say, of his press conference.
Yeah, we've kind of come to expect that a little bit from Coach Rule, right? In terms of calming the waters and giving people sort of the soothing that they needed a little bit in that situation. But he's also not afraid to give them their medicine also. I thought he did a good job of both of those things in his press conference. What did you make of him kind of coming out and directly addressing some of the concerns of mostly, the two people he said that he came here for are gone? How did you take it when he just comes out and says, like, hey, that's not an issue here?
I believe him. I take him at his word. And I know there's people listening that will roll their eyes because they're saying, oh, like a week ago, I thought the same thing about Trev Albert. So how can you just accept anything like that? But I say, Damon, I take him at his word here. I think it's genuine. And I thought it was the thing that you talked about, calming the waters. That was the biggest thing that could do that. But also within that, it was multi-pronged, in which he did not go torch Trev Alberts or anything. He complimented him, gave him his flowers for things he did. And I thought that was important for him in his chair to say some of the stuff he did to sort of try to move that conversation forward, because there are a lot of angry people. And I think he has a knowledge that whatever inside information he has on it, he's like, this is, this guy did do some good things for us. He left it better than he found it. I respect him. I'm going to say that out loud, and maybe this will bring the temperature down a little bit on that. He got off the point that he's sticking around, but then he also said we got to ask ourselves the hard questions too. These are the moments where you got to hit pause sometimes and look at okay, what are the areas we can improve? This is an opportunity to do that. So I think those three main things probably summed up those 12 minutes and all were necessary probably to hit on all those points.
Yeah, it's interesting. So two things in there, BC. Number one, I'm weird, and you know this. So I go back to pressers and radio shows. I actually think Trev was telling us what potentially could be coming down the pipe for a while. I think I'm looking at it from a different lens with the vantage point and positioning of the Big Ten and AAU status and fundraising and the presidency and the common vision. I think I looked at it from the wrong angle. I think he basically was saying, hey, I know some things behind the scenes that we have to get together. And if we're not going to do this, this just can't work. So I think he's different in rule when people tell you, well, I just heard Trev say the same thing. Because if you go back and listen to Trev now, especially that he's made this move, we may have been looking at it from the positive side. He may have been telling the story from if this doesn't happen side. That's number one. The other thing is with Rule, I think he thinks it's okay for fans to be upset. I do. Mm-hmm. I think he wanted to say, this is just me speculating, so I'm getting your thoughts here. Because it's hard, right? Fans are short for fanatics. So they feel a certain way and they're extra passionate. He was going to be an adult and say, hey, listen, I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. He's been good to me. He's gotten a ton of things done as an athletic director. I'm okay with that regard. This is a hard job. I felt like that distinction was pretty important too, because I don't want to tell people how to fan because it is emotional, right? If Caden Proctor's going on spring break with some of his old Alabama teammates and they leave and I was mad about that, that's okay. I would probably be mad too, right? Mm-hmm. But as an adult, I would say, oh man, he's with his friends. I'm sure he's swayed. Maybe give the NIL money back. But so I didn't mind that distinction from Coach Rule.
No, I think those are good points, Damon. Well said as usual. And you're right. It's the way you brought it out is more the layered, probably truth to it. You know how I was kind of giving the knee-jerk reaction of oh, this guy said this and then he left. And that's sort of how people just sum it up sometimes. And I think you're probably more accurate on that. I thought it was also important in that Rule. Within that, I think he was getting across that not everything is going up in flames around here. I felt like he was able to sort of get that point out there. And I think that is meaningful because you're not just talking to reporters and fans. You're talking to maybe people listening in that are considering taking the athletic director job, which I think is still a really great job where it is. and you want them to know, like, there's a lot of positives to this job. And I thought Rule within that those opening remarks also got some of that across, that it's the whole house didn't burn down here. And so that it was effective. Like all the things you said, and I think are true. And I'm with you with that too. I think through it. I mean, like if someone wants to be ticked off for the next year about it,
Yeah,
that's them. It was a big thing. Then they felt like it was somebody who was one of them, and he's not one of them today. So I get it.
We're talking with Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. BC, it kind of seems like, we talked to Sam earlier in the week. Obviously, what DB said there, and then talking to you here, it seems like for one reason or another, Trev got this idea in his head that things were maybe trending negatively for Nebraska.
Like that he couldn't win.
That he couldn't change the tide. And, I mean, do you see where he's coming from? Do you feel like there's any truth there, or
it's a great question.
Did he somehow just kind of get lost in the forest or lost in the trees and not see the forest?
Yeah, it is a good question.
That's pretty good.
The thing is, I don't think any of us know though. Like, I still feel like it's a little vague to me. Like I don't know as much as maybe a few other people do about why everything went down. I was stunned by it. I really was. Even though maybe there were clues, as Damon said, along the way that we could have picked up on. I did not. And so, it could have been exactly what you're kind of getting at with that question, Ravi. It could have been somebody who's a very ambitious guy who sees steps, and this is a next possible one. And he sees where guys like that are also like thinking 5 to 10 years ahead sometimes about like this to this to this. And so I don't discount that either. That's just the best I can do with speculation, and that's all it is. So it's one of those where it's very uncomfortable because it's like it is more speculative, at least from my brain, than it is like actual truth or stuff for sure.
It feels kind of like you brought up a good point there with guys like Trev that see 5 to 10 years ahead. It feels like if he thought he couldn't control some of the variables over the course of that 5 to 10 years, that would shed a negative light on what he thought about Nebraska, whereas maybe it's not as doom and gloom as his mindset would sort of lead it to believe.
Could be.
Does that kind of make sense? Like that's, I'm starting to, sorry, I'm just processing this in real time here. I know it's not a great, I know there's not a question in there, but
he's turning into an adult right before our very eyes, BC.
I wouldn't go that far.
He's gone from anger to thoughtful.
I'm still mad.
So
I'm
BC,
gonna stay mad. It's fine.
And I'm going to get off the Trev thing here for a minute. But how about? So when I told him, I said, "Hey, I'm not mad. I was disappointed, and maybe as Ravi kind of said it, and you did too. That kind of gave me the catalyst for a guy that likes to fix and forecast and go get."
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder if he felt defeated. And I'm not excusing that because that's the part for me that was disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, so hear what I'm saying. Like, I'm like,
go fight.
Yeah. I'm like,
that's how I am.
I'm like, okay, I get it, Trev, but like you're a fighter.
But go fight.
You're a fighter. Like it can feel daunting, but we'll protect you. Like it'll be okay. And I just wonder if he just felt like, well, I'm banging my head against the wall here.
Yeah,
right. And I just don't know if he wanted to bang. That's the part that I couldn't get my mind around. And I still can't because I don't know. Right. Yeah. None of us really know. Like we can speculate all we want, but it's like the minute that emotional threshold hits, like, what is it?
Yeah. I got you. You and Ravi are both having a better segment than I am saying the right stuff. Ravi in 2 words said it to me though. It's like, go fight. Like when I get to the end of this, I feel like he would have carried a big stick no matter what.
Mm-hmm. And we had his back.
Yeah. Yeah. So
he's not going to have anywhere else.
Like he could have said anything and we would have sided with him over anybody else.
Yep.
He's one of the only people I think that could have brought up this stadium project and the massive undertaking that it is, and had people be like, I don't know, but maybe we'll give you that runway. Like, I don't think there's a lot of people who could have got away with that, to be honest. And then
like, hey, we want to put $500 million into a 100-year-old
does
stadium.
Does it bother you now that the people that were critical of the South Stadium project waited till he left? Because I look at that as he probably felt that pushback all along. You just gave him the benefit of the doubt because it was Trev.
For sure.
But now that he's gone, it's like, yeah, I never thought that was a good idea. And I was like,
well, you were awful quiet about it.
Maybe he knew that too. Right? Like, I'm serious. Like, I didn't realize it was such a nasty issue.
Yeah. Maybe
he did.
there could be some Monday morning quarterbacking too with it. Like I was definitely, he's such a good salesman when he talked about like the need for it and all that stuff and kind of laid out. And it's honestly, it wasn't a very clear plan at that. It never has been. It's always been sort of hazy about like exactly what's going to happen with it. But I sort of like gave him the benefit of the doubt and thought like, yeah, it's a 100-year-old stadium. You got to do it somehow, but some way. But man, that's the sort of thing I think back now. It's like there's only so many people who probably could have even like got up in front of the podium, said this is what we're thinking about doing, and not had like 85 to 90% of people like torch things. And it wasn't like that when he said it. It was very sort of down the middle with reaction.
BC, a couple minutes left here. Want to get your thoughts on the actual matchup between Nebraska and Texas A&M.
Absolutely.
Coming up on Friday. Is it too simplistic just to say if Nebraska can keep Texas A&M off of the offensive boards to any degree, they'll be fine?
Too simplistic, maybe just a little bit, but it's the main point. Like it can't be a minus 14 in the boards category or whatever it was, like against Rutgers, where a dude has 15 or 16 offensive, or whatever it was, whatever Omar Rui had that game. They have done better. I feel like I feel like they've done a much better job for the most part on the glass. Like even Saturday against Illinois, It was Shannon getting the foul line that to me was the biggest thing, and Hoiberg said that too. So I feel like I'm in good company. They were -6 in rebounds. Like if they're like -6, rebounds on Friday, I think they can negate that behind the arc and win that game. So something close to that. Obviously, it's a deal where you need to hit your 9 or 10 threes that you sort of average, and The K-Say storyline is taking off like a rocket, of course, as you would expect, and it's cool. I just I hope he plays within himself. I think he's very capable of being that player. I often defend K-Say because I think some people always say he just will guns up shots, or they view him in that way, and he will do heat check shots. But I've also seen him have halves where he shoots it twice, and he's very careful or cautious in like what he puts up and how it plays within the offense. So I think if he's playing smart, it's an opportunity for Nebraska to show this is a really well-rounded team that has everyone. The reason they're here is someone different has stepped up, every different night. That's why they're here. It's not just one guy. And I think there's an opportunity to show that to a lot of people on Friday.
That's Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7.
Safe travels, BC.
Yeah,
Take
thanks a lot, guys.
And vice versa. I'll shoot him a text to make sure travel with care.
Always appreciate the conversation, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, BC.
That's our guy.
He's a smart dude.
That's our guy, Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. Coming up next, we got Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and live from the Pillar Exteriors. I almost said Pixar. I almost just squished the two words together. Pillar Exteriors. Pixar does a different thing.
Yeah.
We're live from the Pillar Exteriors studio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. Joining us now is Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. Kevin, what's going on?
Well, March Madness about to happen. Can't wait for tomorrow. And then, of course, Friday.
How are you divvying this up? Because, Memphis, Corvallis, they couldn't be further apart. You've got two spectacular stories.
You got a Board of Regents meeting you might need to be covering. I don't know.
Like, what is like your suitcase on standby? What's the breakdown look like, Kev?
Well, we can't leave out that there's games in Omaha too. So like your heads are spinning. So thankfully, 10-11 is part of a, Gray Television, which has different affiliate. We have an affiliate in Memphis, but in our network of Nebraska stations, we are sister stations with WWT in Omaha and KSNB in Hastings. So Hastings is going to Corvallis. I'm headed to Memphis, and we have WOW-T going to Pittsburgh for Creighton.
Isn't it interesting though? Like, because you obviously got the good draw because Memphis is the easiest, but I can't wait to hear some of the travel stories with Corvallis because I mean, God bless Amy and that team, but that's not a great trip.
I'm jealous of that trip though. I went up to Corvallis. Darren Erstad was the baseball coach. Nebraska made a regional when Oregon State was one of the top teams in the country, and Mike Riley was the football coach at Nebraska, and I think he was entering his first year or possibly his second. So I kind of doubled up the trip and found some Mike Riley stories, and I still remember from that, folks, from that trip, if I can go off track for you guys for a second, Mike Riley's childhood home had a Nebraska flag out front. The guy who lived in it was from Sioux City and has been a lifelong Nebraska. I did a live report from Mike Riley's childhood home. It was amazing.
That's the wild. So the guy that just randomly lived in Mike Riley's childhood home while Mike Riley was the head coach at Nebraska happened to be from Sioux City?
Absolutely. I did a live interview with the gentleman in his front yard. It was crazy.
Unbelievable.
Local news is incredible. I love it.
My only memory of Corvallis is that they have a Block 15 restaurant, and the only reason I remember is because we have a Block 16,
not Block 16
here in Omaha. So, like, I don't know. That's a squirrely spot. But so, are you packed and ready to go? Because you have to have one ear and one eye close to seeing what happens with the Board of Regents meeting too. Like, how are you breaking it down personally?
We have a lot of clothes packed because we don't know. I know my first destination is Memphis. And then after that, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm ready to go wherever. And that's kind of exciting, though. Maybe I have an extended stay in Memphis. I could be leaving on Saturday morning, or I could be headed to the West Coast. I could be coming back to watch a game in Omaha. I don't know. And my family doesn't like that so much. They want to know when Daddy's coming home.
Yeah, and you guys are so close too. You're not probably exaggerating.
No, it's true. I don't know what the rest of my week looks like.
I got it. So I said this to BC earlier. We talked to Kent yesterday, Pavelka, and you could just feel the emotional connection that he has to that program as a lifelong basketball fan. You're right there. And Lincoln, and there are so many basketball fans that are waiting to exhale. Do you feel it being right there in the community?
Absolutely. And part of it is the makeup of this team. Some of the past Nebraska teams, 94, 93, the talent on those teams was so high. I think those athletes were liked because the level in which they played. I think this team, it doesn't have that high of a ceiling, but the character traits of this team make them so stinking likable. Who doesn't enjoy watching Casey bury a heat check three and then do some of the antics down the court? It's pretty fun.
Me.
Josiah Alec being a Lincoln guy and the way he plays the game and the big hair, like he's likable. You have an international player in Rink Mass that everybody's really grown to appreciate his game because the skill set is pretty diversified. I just think the collection of characters on the team just make them a fun squad. And I think that's part of the reason that I think Kent has been so emotionally attached to this team, not to mention the Fred Hoiberg factor. He's such an incredibly nice guy, respectful and likable. And, keep in mind, Fred's first 2 years, he won 7 games each. It got off to such a rocky start. And to see a guy just withstand that and all the while never lost his cool, never got too open-mouthed about his critics, but he just stayed the course, and now he's seeing the other side of it. 23 wins and a contract extension.
Kevin, flipping over to football here for a second. Are you sending anybody out to cover Nebraska Pro Day? How do you handle that?
We got a Nebraska Pro Day covered today as well, and ready to go when spring football, hits the field next week.
There's just so many guys I'm interested in. I was flat out shocked because I called him a Sunday guy. I think Quentin Newsome is highly overlooked. Like I'll be curious to see kind of how he performs athletically, but he's a dog competitor. He's gifted physically. He was the one I was probably most surprised about, Kevin, that didn't get a combine invite.
I agree with you on that. Look at Cam Taylor-Britt, and I don't want to compare Quentin to Cam, but I don't feel like the gap was so great.
Mm-hmm.
Cam's a really good player. He was a special talent.
You could make the case that Quentin was more of a natural corner.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, DB, is like Cam probably a better football player overall.
Yeah.
But Q, with his measurables and the way he can, defend the ball when it's in the air, like I just didn't feel like there was such a massive gap that like Cam can be a second-round pick and already be starting in the NFL, and Quentin can't even get a combine invite.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's a little puzzling. I think he's going to be on a roster for camp somewhere at the very least.
We're talking with Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. Kevin, so you've got Pro Day today. You got Board of Regents meeting today. You're flying off to Memphis. You got people going all over the place. At what point does your schedule slow down just a little bit?
Right.
July?
Yeah, because you got spring. Yeah, like it doesn't.
Yeah, no, you get like 3 days in July. Is that?
maybe a week. Maybe there's a week in there. But and plus Nebraska baseball and softball, they've been playing a lot of home games in March, so that's keeping us busy. And nice win for Will Bolt's team last night over Omaha with a pitcher who had never made a start and struck out 9 guys.
Yeah, so five was 0 earned runs. How about that?
He was fantastic. And I mean, if you keep that up, though, he might work his way into the weekend rotation. He looked Mason McConaughey looked really, really good last night. So, and high school spring sports, they're well underway right now too. So there's a lot cooking right now. It's a great thing, but obviously our biggest focus right now is what's going to happen in the NCAA tournament.
When you look at one of the things that Coach Rule said that I thought was pretty cool, because you just know his personality. He's dead serious. He's like, the thing that made me mad about the matchup with A&M is people will talk about things other than the players. You feel like this kind of fiduciary responsibility to just keep it about the matchup, because I think he's dead on. This one's about the student athletes.
Yeah, he is dead on. And of course, sitting in that room when Matt says that, one of my thoughts was, man, he's the mature kid in the room every time. We said that all last fall.
Yeah, he's the
of course,
adult.
it's Matt bringing common sense and reason, and we're the ones in the chairs with all the emotions and so knee-jerk to everything. And Matt brings in logic, and we're like, gosh dang it, like, why are you doing this again?
Just one time I want him to burn it to the ground. Just one time.
Where he comes across as like unflappable.
Yeah, but just one time, just burn it to the ground, Matt.
Right. He just won't do it. He's self-awareness. But, thinking about Matt Rule's hiring over a year ago, beyond the football part, he was placed in Lincoln, Nebraska to make everybody feel calm when they don't want to be calm. And it's happened on more than one occasion. This is the most recent instance of it with Trev Albert's departure, and everybody's all just so emotional and worked up. And Matt can make everybody feel a little bit at ease that things are going to be okay.
That's our guy, Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. Kevin, safe travels wherever you end up over the next few days, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Let's be careful out there, Kevin. Be easy.
I'll do my best. You
Thanks,
guys
buddy.
have a great one.
That's Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. Coming up next, I'm going to see if I can get DB to call his guy and get me some of this Pro Day gear, because it is sick. We'll have more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. We're wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And we're live from the Pillar Exteriors studio here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We're brought to you by our friends at War Horse Sportsbook. You've got until today to get your picks in for that $1 million bracket challenge. Make sure you get those picks in today. and validate them in person, activate those entries in person at Warhorse Casino Lincoln through the 24th. So get the picks in today. You can activate the entries through the 24th to make sure you are eligible for the $1 million bracket challenge. On the prop card challenge, you still have through the end of the month to get your prop card challenge entries in. You can get a $50 sportsbook wager or 50 points earned on slots and racing to get more entries into the $100,000 prop card challenge now through the 28th. Those props are for the semifinals and finals games here in the tournament. Make sure you go to warhorsecasino.com if you have any thoughts, questions, concerns. They'll have you covered there at warhorsecasino.com. I wanted to go back to something we were talking about with BC because I was sort of processing something in real time there that maybe has made the most sense of anything we've talked about with Trev and why he left. And that is, Sam mentioned on Monday that in his conversation with him, he had gotten the sense that Trev believed some things about the future of the University of Nebraska that were reasonably negative and that Sam wasn't sure if they were true. And then you're talking about him processing through things, and BC's talking about him processing through things. And it kind of just clicked at me for a second when BC says, he's a guy that sees 5 to 10 years along down the line. And you're saying, he's a guy that likes to be able to control certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've heard multiple times, well, he's kind of a control freak or whatever. And I think you have to be in a position like that. And all of a sudden, it all just kind of lined up for me with me just making a statement to BC and not really asking a question, which is great interviewing, in case you're curious. That's how they teach it in the journalism school I did not go to. But it all just kind of lined up with okay, so if this is a guy that's looking 5-10 years down the line, and this is a guy that likes to be able to control things, is it just as simple as if he can't control it, he assumes the outcome will be negative?
So yes and no. I think there's like a point that he reaches, right? So I think he was willing to go along with some things that he didn't feel like he was necessarily getting his way on. And I'm saying getting his way for lack of a better term, right? Because he has a vision.
Mm-hmm.
His bosses, whomever he was reporting to, has a vision, and he has to see where those couple of worlds meet. So I think to some degree, he was confident that he could overcome a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
But he lost his protection, kind of lost his go-between,
mm-hmm.
had to deal with some things at the surface level that I don't think he originally signed up for. And so if you weren't going to turn it all the way over to him, I mean, everybody gets to that point where like, just let me do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just let me do my job. If this is what I'm tasked with, then just let me do it. Or it's okay. If you want to have some parameters and get some guidelines on who I'm going to answer to, like, let's do it this way.
Let's get that done.
Let's get this guy, or let's get that done. So, I mean, yes and no on the controlling thing, real time. It's just, if you're going to task me with it, then it's the same way I would be, right? If it's up to me, then let me do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to manage me, then tell me what it is that you want done, and let's agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
To play in both worlds it's just not good. So when you say, is it because if he can't control it? Yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's just fed up with he had probably reached a breaking point with having it both ways.
So it maybe isn't him having to control it, but him not trusting who he thought was controlling it.
Yeah. Like, that wasn't what I signed up for. There is some controlling mechanisms in him. You know what I mean?
Which I think a lot of people in those types of positions have, right?
So, and I didn't really view that as a negative.
Yeah.
And I think he would have been willing to go along a little easier if there would have been more of a clear-cut plan. What he can't stand is kind of being
ambiguity.
The leaf. Yeah.
Which that's understandable, right? Because that'd be a really frustrating place to be in a work environment, is having ambiguity.
Especially when you get all the heat, right?
Yes.
It's you're trying to raise $450 million. People have said all along that price tag is going to balloon and be bigger.
Probably.
You didn't sign up for some of that to begin with, but you've been tasked with it. Can you get some help? I mean,
Can you get some shield, so a little heat shield?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but
that's part of it.
There wasn't really the go-between. So I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and act like I knew the relationship between he and Dr. Kaborik, because I don't.
Yeah.
You know, but I do know Dr. Kaborik. He seems like he has a good handle. He's been there for a while. I think he's seen the good, the bad. If there is the ugly, the ugly. So I think he has some range. You know? But now how that played out, because I think he was one of only a handful of people that knew about the A&M courtship to begin with. So how he handled that from the minute he had the information, I don't know.
So Joel on Twitter brings up an interesting point here that I think is kind of what I'm trying to get at.
The mayor? Shafe?
Yes.
Yeah.
He says sometimes people who are always looking 5 to 10 years down the line create monsters in their own mind that exist only in the futures they've constructed.
Yeah. Well, so
that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yes and no. I do agree with that. I just had this conversation in my own household yesterday. Stop inventing things that haven't happened yet. I just want to plan ahead. Now that you're putting up a mental roadblock in order to stress you out. Like
I'm somebody that deals with anxiety. I get that. Like, I'm very familiar with this scenario.
Yeah. So like he's right.
There's a certain part of that that's real, right?
100%. Like, you can constantly be the but if person.
Yeah.
Or when.
If you're constantly preparing for worst case scenarios, it's hard to prepare for anything else.
That's the thing. And so there's a difference between planning and being prepared and worrying. Okay. When those two, when you create,
it's a pretty fine line.
Well, when you worry to a point that you're paralyzed in the moment, you've crossed it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like when paralysis sets in, thinking about something, being so zeroed into something that has yet to happen.
When the analysis turns into paralysis.
Yeah. So I mean, I agree. Like, I live this he's right, but I don't know if it got to the point of. Because the thing that's missing in that isolated context is, well, how long have you tried to do something ahead of time before you got the results that you wanted? Like, if it never happened. So, like, let's say Joel's right. All right. You know, I'm a visionary, and man, if this doesn't go this way now, I'm just never going to be able to do that. Like, that's a real conversation people have in their head. The part that the context you need is, have you tried to revisit it before? Hey, I've been trying to get some answers. If we keep continuing down this road, then the thought process could be justified about the paralysis of 5 to 10 years down the road. I don't know how much legwork
was done beforehand
before you get to a breaking point where you're like, it's just not going to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the statement unto itself is absolutely correct. I just don't know what the legwork was before that.
So I do this.
I got to imagine though that there were conversations.
You would think so, right? But I think sometimes people who either have control issues and I don't say that in a negative connotations. You're in positions where being in control is advantageous and that's something you're used to and that you're comfortable with. I think sometimes they get timelines in their head of if this doesn't happen by now, and those timelines aren't necessarily always real.
You ever been around those people? And sometimes I think I've been one of them. So, I mean, full disclosure, where you think you're better at what you're doing than who's telling you what to do?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sometimes that can be hard to manage.
But sometimes you're wrong too.
Like
that's where it gets tricky, right?
So what I'm telling,
that's where it gets tricky.
The only point of this exercise is not necessarily a right or wrong; it's vantage points.
So, like, if you're the vantage point of Trev and you think you're better at what you're doing than the interim president that's telling you, like, hey, we need to wait on this, or we're working on this, but not quite in your timing. But you think you're better at this than he is. It's going to be really hard to continue thinking you're going to still work with this guy.
And like, I'll give you two of my former bosses, right? Dave and Mike. Both stretched me in some areas that I didn't think were good ideas at first.
Mhm.
Oh man, I'm pretty good at this. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a whole nother facet to this. Yeah, I don't want to worry about that. Nah, there's a whole nother facet to this. Like let's open some things up to you.
Mhm.
And at some point I had to say, oh, okay, I trust you. And they turned out being right.
And
Both of them.
And he trusted Ted. He probably didn't have that same level of trust with Dr. Kabort.
Right. So, and that happened over time, though, right? Like my pushback lasted
a while,
at least a month.
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know when like that magic moment is where it's like, okay, I can't see this, but I have faith, right? When I lay my head down at night, it's like, all right, man, you said it, let's go.
And it's possible Trev just couldn't get himself there mentally.
I don't know if that's in his personality.
That would make sense.
I don't know if that's in Trev's personality, to be honest.
Totally fair. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Kerry Miller of Bleacher Report, get some NCAA basketball as the tournament proper, the whole field, starts out tomorrow. We will do that next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, and we're live from the Pillar Exterior stage here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, where we're joined by Kerry Miller. He is a writer for Bleacher Report covering college basketball. Kerry, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Looking forward to the tournament really getting started tomorrow.
Okay, it's good to talk to you again. Did you feel like, and I know you cover a ton of college basketball. I'm an ACC homer just because Carolina's my favorite non-Nebraska team. So I'd seen Virginia before for a long time. Did you feel like basketball was set back a little, or are you like, yeah, not surprised? This is kind of who Virginia has been all year, or for the last couple of years.
Both statements can be true. That was hideous and not surprising at all. I did the mock committee in Omaha with a couple of guys earlier in the month, and we were really, really stuck on Virginia because their resume metrics said, hey, this team needs to be in the tournament, and we just kept saying but we've watched them play. The eye test has to matter to some extent. They lost so many games by 15 plus points this season, which, historically you never see from Virginia. If they lose, it's by 5 points in a 55-50 type of game. But they were just, when they got away from home, they were garbage this season. I did not have them in my final field. That was the only team that I missed. And I'm fine with taking that line in the sand on Virginia just being a bad team that didn't belong in.
Kerry, that's interesting too, because, and listen, I said on Monday, we'll spend too much time on who didn't get in as opposed to kind of all the missed seedings, because I felt like that was a lot more egregious. But how do you think you could sleep at night? And let's just take two teams, right? And I'm not going to waste your expertise on debating, but I mean, a Pittsburgh-Virginia debate would be pretty easy to settle, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I believe they only played once, and Pittsburgh won in Charlottesville. You have that. I didn't think Pittsburgh was all that close. I mean, they obviously weren't in the end. But with that non-conference schedule, that's going to ding you every time. I mean, we can argue whether or not that's fair, but history has shown that the committee, if you're anywhere close to the bubble, if you're 342nd or wherever Pitt finished, you're not getting in. So I wasn't surprised that they, weren't even among the first 3 out or whatever it was. But to not get Indiana State and to have to watch Virginia.
Oh, here we go. My partner has been on this for weeks.
It's like you can read my mind, Kerry, because that was literally my next question. If we look at this and think that Virginia deserved to be in the tournament and Indiana State didn't, we're relying too much on the metrics, right? There has to be, if we've got a whole committee for this, can someone in that room, can it be their job to just make a common sense argument for hey, we've seen Virginia not break 50 in half their games this year. Maybe we go a different direction.
Yeah. And And metrics wise, like it's not like, Indiana State was
it's not crazy, right?
in the 80s or something. They were 29th in the net. Like they're the highest net team to ever be left out. And they were really good, really fun to watch. Like it makes no sense to do. I feel like a lot of the decisions that they made kind of felt like really setting the narrative to expand the field. I mean, only 3 Big East teams getting in. I mean, you're just asking for an entire section of the country to be pissed off about the size of the field at that point.
Kerry, when you take a look at how much, let me just ask you, let's go back. How much do you pit like regular season turmoil and ups and downs and top 25s and losing on the road and apply it to what happens in March? Is when you look at the brackets, is the volatility of the regular season at the frontal lobe, or is that somewhere tucked in the back?
Actually, there was maybe 8 years ago at this point. I don't even remember what the final solution was to what I came up with, but I went back and looked at like the whether crazy regular seasons actually lead to crazy March Madness.
Mm-hmm.
It was like based on, number of AP upsets, all this stuff. Like I put way too much research into it. I should probably remember what I came up with, but I'm pretty sure it was, if the regular season is absolutely crazy, the tournament actually ends up being a little bit chalky. Like it's kind of weird how it plays out. But I mean, we certainly feel like after watching championship week and 5 bid seeds and really Connecticut, the only team showing that you can trust them, which I think was already true before conference championship week, it feels like we're just headed for absolute anarchy. I mean, aside from feeling like you need to have Connecticut at least in your Sweet 16, I feel like anything could happen in this tournament.
We're talking with Kerry Miller of Bleacher Report. Kerry, as you look at the field, we mentioned some of the teams we thought should be in, shouldn't be in, things like that. But my partner over here would make an argument that some of the seedings were more egregious than the teams that were left in or left out,
100%.
Particularly maybe a Clemson as a 6. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't know that I buy Gonzaga
Boise
as a 5.
as a 10, Gonzaga as a 5. Like,
did you have an issue with the seedings of the teams that actually did make the tournament?
Mostly just with the Mountain West being underseeded.
Agreed.
And I felt that Florida Atlantic has no business being an 8, but I also all season long said I have no clue where I'm going to put Florida Atlantic. Like I ended up with them as my last team in, so I almost missed them entirely, and they were an 8. But Nevada at a 10, I had them as a 6. New Mexico, if they had not won the Mountain West tournament, they weren't going to be in, which, boy, after the second game of that tournament, you had Evan Washburn out there asking Jalen House how it feels to be a lock for the tournament. That was egregious. But
it's weird to see Boise and New Mexico both as 10s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's weird. It's great for the Mountain West. They're going to get
or 11,
extra units from Colorado State beating Virginia last night. That's like $2 million in the Mountain West's pocket. Good for them. They're happy to be underseeded in that regard. But
and that's a good
like
basketball team. I'm a big Mountain West guy too, Kerry.
Yeah, Mountain West has dudes, man. Every single Mountain West team that got in, and if UNLV had gotten in, they had dudes too. Like they're all going to be pretty good teams. I know, for prior to last season when San Diego State made their run, it was, you just fade the Mountain West no matter what in the dance. But I have bought back in, and I think the league's got a chance to have a couple of Sweet 16 teams this year. But seeding wise, yeah, I mean, New Mexico is a favorite against Clemson. That's about all you need to know.
Kerry, all right, I'm going to be a homer here for a second, so just stick with me. Give me the argument for a deep Creighton run into the tournament.
I mean, if they're hitting their shots, absolutely. And I think they got a favorable draw. I mean, that 6-11 South Carolina-Oregon game, like I don't really buy either of those teams as a strong candidate to do much of anything. I think, certainly we've seen Tennessee's history in the tournament, second round Rick Barnes. Are they going to be able to win or not? I don't know. But yeah, the question with Creighton is whether their offense is going to show up away from home. I had them as a team that I don't trust because their last 7 games at home, they're averaging like 89 points per game. but you get them on the road and they're like 73 points per game their last 5. Obviously, they had those horrible sub-50-point showings against Connecticut and Colorado State earlier in the season. Just something about once they get outside of that Chi Health Center, they don't shoot quite as well. But if they're able to find that offense, if they can, avoid getting kind of pushed around like they did by Providence twice this season, I mean, they're a good team. They deserve a 3 seed, and they can hit shots as well as anyone in the country.
Kerry, you say pushed around. I like to use the term assaulted against Providence. I'm not sure what we witnessed there was basketball in the Big East tournament, but that's okay.
That's fair. I just think with the loss at St. John's, which, again, was kind of that case of when they get on the road, you just don't know if they're going to be hitting their shots. I mean, they'll only score 66 against what is not a very good St. John's defense. Let's be honest with that one there. But I think that they just sometimes don't show up on offense on the road. That's what scares me. To be fair, I don't trust anyone outside of Connecticut. Like you could ask me questions about Houston and Purdue, and I would have just as many complaints.
Yeah, is anyone good? That's the question.
Kerry, here's the thing. So we're talking conference strength, the number of teams in. You mentioned defense, and the SEC can't play dead in terms of playing good defense. Is that help or hurt by some of the quick turnarounds with scout in tournament play? Are you more or less exposed if you have the inability to guard, in your opinion, in March?
That's a good question. I've never much thought about that. Usually for the quick turnaround stuff, I look at, more so a depth thing, which like with Kansas, if they're even able to survive.
Well, how about that?
Them turning around and playing Gonzaga or McNeese, I think they're dead. I don't think Kansas really has a chance of reaching the Sweet 16. But these SEC teams, like, they don't play defense, but they're like, hockey on hardwood, right? Auburn, their second 5 is like almost the most efficient unit in the entire country.
Yep. Alabama
goes relatively deep, not as deep as Auburn. Kentucky's got 10 guys. So I think the quick turnaround won't be a problem for them, certainly in terms of stamina. Now, defense-wise, yeah, I'm terrified of Alabama and Kentucky. Picking them to win multiple games is scary, but they're so good on offense that you also are afraid to pick them to lose at any point. So,
Kerry, as you look at the coaches, you mentioned Rick Barnes and Tennessee, who probably gives some teams a little, or some pickers a little bit of pause. I look at Brad Underwood with Illinois, and I don't know how much I trust them. Out of some of these top teams, obviously I assume Danny Hurley is one of those guys that you trust, but Matt Painter doesn't have a great history. Hubert Davis just doesn't have much history. Kelvin Sampson has a decent history, but's never really been able to get over that hump. Who do you trust outside of Danny Hurley in some of these top few seed lines?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't really trust. I mean, usually the answer would be Bill Self at Kansas, but I don't trust the situation they're in right now. I think Bruce Pearl at Auburn, now granted he's going to have to run into Danny Hurley at UConn in the Sweet 16, but I mean, he made that Final Four run in 2019. They've got depth. They don't have the quality wins this season, but they're 4th on KenPom. Like they're a very good team. I think if they had been in any other region, I'd feel better about them making a deep run. But yeah, I mean, especially looking at like the 2 seeds, right? I mean, what has TJ Otzelberger really accomplished at Iowa State other than turning them into just a really good defense? They haven't made a deep run.
We have no idea, right? No idea what he is.
Yeah. Rick Barnes, you already said that. Shaka Smart is outside of that one run at VCU a lifetime ago.
Been a long time.
Always getting knocked out early in the tournament. Tommy Lloyd hasn't done anything at Arizona. So, yeah, I don't really trust any of the coaches.
As you're watching this turning field and the matchup set for you, are you convinced now more than ever that it's a guards game? Or now with some of these explosive wings and these teams that are playing without true like point guards, kind of like the Damascus of the world, the Dillingham, like there are a lot of teams that don't use real points. Where are you on guards ruling the roost here in March?
Yeah, that is always what it is. Like we've said it's the year of the big man for like 3 years running, but once you get to March, it really is all about having that dual combo guard backcourt. Like that's what we always see from the teams that win it all. You got to have 2 dudes who can shoot and also average 3 to 4 assists per game. That's usually a winning formula. I know that we've had that narrative about Illinois. They don't really have a point guard. They don't really have a center either, aside from Dane Danger when he's in there just kind of doing his DJ Burns thing down there in the post. But if you could score, you could score. I mean, I don't care if you have to, guys can run ISO ball and they don't need the assists. And some teams, you have to move the ball around just to find that open shot. It is what it is. That's the beauty of college basketball is there's 362 different styles. 30 of them can win a national championship.
And all of them are, or not all of them are as ugly as we saw Virginia last night. Kerry, we appreciate your time. Enjoy the tournament. It's my favorite time of the year. I have a feeling it might be yours as well. And hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
All right. Sounds good. Take care, guys.
Thanks, Kerry.
That's Kerry Miller from the Bleacher Report. Would have stayed and talked to Kerry a little bit longer, but much like happened last week during the 9 o'clock interview with our guy Jacob Padilla on Wednesday, Nebraska decided to do some things. Breaking from Pete Thamel here on Twitter at this point. I don't know that it's anywhere else. Nebraska, that Board of Regents meeting may not have been about the president. The Nebraska.
That's why I kept saying, like, the media intimated that they were going to name a priority candidate.
Instead, they've named a new athletic director, or they're about to, as Pete Thamel's reporting. Nebraska is finalizing a 6-year deal to make Washington athletic director Troy Dannon the school's new athletic director. The hiring of Dannon gives Nebraska an immediate replacement for Trev Alberts, and it it surprises, I think, a lot of people. I'm surprised at how fast they moved on this.
ESPN's reporting it now. It's all over.
Yeah, this appears to be the truth here, and the timing of it directly after the Board of Regents meeting makes sense. He's only been at Washington since October.
A year, October 7th.
Yeah, I mean, like 6 months, not even. So he did not hire. He's not the one that hired Kalen DeBoer. He is the one that hired Jed Fish. He also hired Willie Fritz at Tulane, which is where he was prior to Washington. Prior to that, he was at Northern Iowa as well. So he's got some familiarity with the with the Midwest. He's got some familiarity hiring football coaches, which hopefully he won't have to do here, since we feel like we've got our guy. But that is
how about the staying in conference after only 6 months to come to another school?
Does it count as in conference if you haven't played a game in that conference yet?
Pretty ballsy. Well, he knows where.
I know where they're going.
He'll be seeing his constituents. I know that.
How many people in Washington from October to now actually know his name?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know what I mean?
Fair.
Somebody already updated it in Wiki, by the way. I mean, it's moving. It was edited 10 minutes ago.
Shane is Team Wiki.
The people on Wikipedia don't sleep. They're on call 24/7. So
wow.
That is the breaking news. Troy Dannon of Washington will be Nebraska's new
looks like a 6-year deal.
Yeah,
tentatively.
6-year deal is what Pete Thamel is reporting. So that's going to be I'm surprised at how fast they moved. I mean, originally we had said we thought they would go athletic director before president just because it's an easier hire.
And I said that to Sam on Monday, and he gave me pause because I knew what he was saying. Go ahead.
Well, let me ask this. The timing's not a coincidence, right? They say they're gonna name a priority candidate yesterday today.
Who said?
Chris Dunker, Lincoln Journal-Star.
Okay.
Now I think we in the media connected. Oh, Board of Regents meeting, priority candidate. That must be what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. But in order to know that they were going to announce a priority candidate, they probably already had that meeting, right?
You would think that they would know the priority candidates,
and you would think since Troy Dannon is going to be directly reporting to said priority candidate, most likely, maybe they didn't move on the president, but maybe they know where they're going on the president before this happens.
Again, maybe it's Kevork.
Maybe it is Kevork.
Now, I don't know though, but I will say this: it was very Nebraska-ish to name the AD
before the president.
And I said that with confidence to Sam because, well, a couple of things. Number one, it's a little easier to function without the president, than it is an athletic director, and you're reaching a critical time with where this is in the season.
Yeah, you really don't want this to drag on.
Nope, can't do it. Because once you get past spring ball and heading into summer and fall camp, that's not when you're wanting to hire an athletic director. I just felt like, and I know it's backwards, but it is what it is. It made more sense for the university to take care of the athletic department before they did the president, because they had somebody that was much more familiar with functioning in the role as the interim president to get them by than they did an athletic director.
The timing of it
makes sense.
Yeah, 100%.
And I know, and he almost talked me off of it. He's like that. He's like, DB, that would be backwards. And I'm like, Sam, I know.
Technically, it's backwards, right? Because you're hiring the subordinate before you hire the superior. But
and I think people gave pushback to should interims be hiring the permanents. That was the big thing.
I think so, right? But should interims be hiring out contract extensions? Like, I
think that was already in place.
That's fine, but the optics of it.
But remember, optics are just what we say when we don't know enough.
Right.
We do know that Hoiberg has been there. He's been there double-digit years. Like, he appears to know what he's doing.
Yeah, there is some institutional knowledge of how things work. I also, maybe this is inaccurate, but I also feel like the AD has more like hands-on day-to-day responsibilities than the university president does. That's more of a leadership visionary role, whereas the AD has some more hands-on stuff he has to do. So getting that filled makes a little bit of sense to me. But I think you can make the argument they're doing them both at the same time.
Yeah. You know what? My gut tells me, and it was wrong the other day, so I had to take a cleanse.
Yeah.
I took the 15-day cleanse.
Careful.
Yeah, I know. It got me. Way early yesterday, though. Way early. Out of the way by 8. It was cool. right before Virginia, and I should have taken another one.
Oh, so yeah.
But
it looks like Virginia was what
I think you're right. I think you have to have a good idea on. Well, you have a great idea on one because you're going to make the hire. I think you have a good idea.
But I'd have a hard time believing they didn't tell him the name in order to make this hire. Like if I'm a guy coming into this role, I at least have to have an idea.
Was Washington that volatile?
I don't know if it's that volatile, but I do think there's more variance.
You like the stability here?
I think so.
Nothing gives you that. Nothing gives you that illusion, though.
It's hard to put into words.
I don't want to get into the Pollard job discussion.
No. I'm not doing that. I think just over the course of decades, the commitment to sports, I think, has been the solid at Nebraska. At no point. Now, listen, we had arguments over who should be in charge. We've had arguments over how it looks or how things are operated. But have you ever felt at any point in Nebraska's, call it 50 years, that Nebraska has not been committed to their athletic department?
No.
Committed to being successful.
Some
people have made bad decisions.
I like the way you framed that. It left me very little wiggle room.
That's what I'm trying to do.
We're getting it. It's pretty good.
Whereas I feel like at Washington, and obviously we're removed, but when you go through an 0-12 season, it's hard for me to sit there and be like, yeah, your commitment to sports has been unwavering.
Because, at the time that Dannon was hired, he was only the 16th athletic director in the university's history.
Yeah, stability can mean a couple different things.
So that's pretty good, right?
No,
considering we've had 6 since
in
the Big
decade.
Ten.
Yeah, and in literally like 12 years.
Right?
100%, yeah. Now, so I understand what you mean, but I think stability can mean different things.
I do like how you frame that, though, with the commitment to excellence in athletics.
There's an unwavering commitment at Nebraska to athletics. That's not true everywhere. And I think you can come to Nebraska knowing that's probably going to be true forever.
Real quick, I asked you we got Coach DeVries coming up.
Yeah.
Right? I asked you a question the other day, not to you, but out loud. I said, is it a pro or a con that the athletic department financially is in the state it's in? If you're a president, do you look at that as like,
you mean that it's like independently viable?
Yeah. Do you look at that as a positive, or do you look at that as like, man, these guys think they run everything?
That's a good question. We will tackle that at 9:45.
You know what I mean?
100%. No, I could definitely see it. It's because it's like maybe they don't need me, right? Which people in leadership don't love. Coming up next, we're going to talk to D-Rock, head coach at Drake, Darian DeVries, as he gets ready to start his NCAA tournament run here in Omaha for Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and live from the Pillar Exterior stage. That's the BM Ravi Lulla. Joining us now is Coach Darian DeVries, head basketball coach for the Drake Bulldogs. They will be dancing here in Omaha tomorrow. Coach, how are you this morning?
Hey, doing great.
Coach, I'm pretty pumped, as you can probably – you're like, why does this guy like me so much? But, man, listen, congratulations. And very few people will have as good of a lay of the land as you will once you get here.
No, it was a pretty special moment to get to come back to Omaha, and I know our family's really excited, and so many great friends in the area here, and can't wait to get to play in front of them all.
Coach, I know you've been at Drake for a minute now, but I still kind of consider you a Blue Jay. Is that okay? Is that all right with you?
No, I had a great 20 years here. It was certainly an awesome experience, and now enjoying our time at Drake, but certainly thankful to get back here as well.
Coach, speaking of your time here at Creighton, you had an opportunity to kind of see firsthand a situation that now is playing out with you in terms of coaching a really talented player who also happens to be your son. Did you learn anything from the way Coach Mack handled that to how you and Tucker have handled the dynamic?
Yeah, I thought they handled it great. I know Tucker and I are having a blast these last 3 years, just getting to spend some unique set of time together, because it's when kids go to college, you don't get to see them very often, or even when they're growing up as a coach, you miss a lot of stuff. And now I feel like getting some of that back.
Kyle, I only hope and pray, Coach, I could be like you and Tucker, right? I'll be doing it from a play-by-play standpoint and not a coach, but man, if my kid could have half the career Tucker has. But on a grander scale, you said 20 years in Creighton. 20 seems to be the magic number. That's all you do since you've been at Drake is get to 20. When you're first looking at this job and you're looking at the evolution of where you want to be, at what point did you think, you know what? I'm pretty good at this. I think we can be our own benchmark, because that's really what you've become, and you did it in such a short time.
I don't know if you go into the job maybe, thinking, hey, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. I think you just go into it and kind of trust what process you want it to look like, and then go follow it and stick to it. And we've been fortunate. We've had some really, really good players, some, over these last 6 years, and been fortunate in that way.
Coach, I wanted to talk to you about the Missouri Valley here for just a second. Obviously, Indiana State had a great run this year. They didn't end up making to the tournament, but how much pride do you have in your league when you do have teams like Indiana State, or obviously you guys have been good for several years now. You've got some pretty quality teams in that conference that has changed how it's looked quite a bit over the last handful of years.
Yeah, we have had some really good teams. I thought this year was one of our best years as a league overall, and certainly was unfortunate Indiana State didn't make it to the tournament, because I thought they deserved to be in. But those last few spots are always tough, and with a few upsets there to push them into the NIT. But certainly thankful we're in it and getting the opportunity to play though.
It's kind of cool to watch from afar, to watch it unfold. You guys are so good offensively, especially getting to your spots, ultra quick, and obviously Tucker can fill it up. But you were kind of known as a defensive guy. You got to give a lot of credit to your staff, I'm assuming, or do you like playing on both sides of the fence, where as a good defensive mind that can turn around good defensive scout, you guys can score the basketball pretty well as well?
Yeah, I think our defense is a lot of that, because when you can get some stops, we put a huge emphasis on our transition game, a lot like Coach McDermott does here. So the more stops we can get, the more defensive rebounds we can get. It gives us an opportunity to get out and push and play in space, and I think that's when we're at our best.
Coach, I'm sure you've had plenty of time, as much time as you can really, to look at Washington State, your matchup coming up here tomorrow. What are some of the challenges you think are going to be presented with you against the Cougars?
I think the biggest challenge is, and you'll see it right when they walk out on the floor, they are huge, and we are not. Yep. And that's probably going to be a big part of the game is can we keep them out of the paint. Can we rebound with them? Because we are considerably smaller than them, and all year in the Pac-12, they've done a great job of, pounding it inside and then getting offensive rebounds and putbacks.
Coach, you're kind of looking at the matchup, and I was kind of intimating that a little bit on Monday. That Washington State presents some unique challenges from their length and how they can get on the glass, and obviously keeping Isaac Jones off out of the paint too. But they have to turn around and guard you guys, right? Like, do you see some things there that you think are fairly advantageous?
Yeah, again, I think goes back to try to score in transition as much as you can, and then they do a mixture of some zone and man, and kind of start in zone, and then it turns into man. So trying to get some of those opportunities where maybe you can get some clean looks, because even when you drive it in there, there's a bunch of big bodies waiting for you. So we're going to need to make some shots. There's no question, because of their size, and hopefully it's one of those nights where we can get it going from multiple guys. And
people, you guys you've got some good experience, right? With really, really good basketball team a year ago, guys that you're going to see on the other side, like Miles Rice, just a freshman. Do you like your experience having got a really good taste last year in terms of, hey, we were right there, guys. We were getting ready to make this run. Do you talk about that much?
Yeah, we don't talk about it much. We do have 10 new guys, but the 4 guys that did play in that tournament game last year, I think it does help. From Tucker and Connor Enright to 2 of our starting guards, Darnell Brody, those 3 all played in that game, and it doesn't help maybe win you the game, but it certainly helps. With some of the nerves, some of the things that go around the game with the media and attention and the crowd, because it is a different vibe. Right? Everybody that's been in it. This tournament's so good because you can just feel it from everybody.
Coach, you mentioned some of that experience, obviously, with Tucker. Most nights, no matter how long you're playing in this NCAA tournament, he's going to be just about the best player on the floor. That has to give you some level of confidence, even if you are going, we're going up against this major conference team, or we're going up this team with a bunch of size that maybe we don't match up great with. But there has to be some level of confidence. Like, yeah, but they're going to have a hard time putting anybody on the floor that's as good as our guy.
Well, I think it's always nice just when you have a guy that can go win you a game. And I think we have several of them, to be honest with you. We have multiple guys that can get 20 in a night, and certainly Tucker's one of them. So it'd be really nice to have a couple of those happen tomorrow night.
Coach, I was so impressed with the last, and you mentioned some new faces, but that backcourt is very experienced. The pace and quickness in which you play, I think may catch some folks off guard that don't watch you a ton. What does it look like when you know that you're playing the way that you want to if you're not getting out in transition?
Yeah, I think defensively, it's as you mentioned, our guards. That's where it all starts. If our guards are able to get in the ball and kind of disrupt other teams' offenses and kind of be, physical on entries and handoffs and stuff like that, that's usually a good sign for us that we're in a good place. Now, Washington State has an unbelievably fast point guard, so that would be a great challenge for our guards to try to keep them in front.
Coach, I don't know how much you look at some of your metrics as a team and things like that, but kind of understanding your personality a little bit from your time here at Creighton, I have to imagine the fact that you give up the fewest percentage of offensive rebounds in the country is a particular point of pride for you.
It is. It certainly is. I think it's, when I watch the tape, I don't always see that, but it's.
You only see the ones you miss, right?
Yeah, the ones you miss. Coach, we're always wanting more, but I think some of it too, a lot of teams respect our transition game. So when shots go up, they do get back. And, our opponent tomorrow night is not going to do that. They are going to send multiple bodies at it. So we'll have to be on point with, making sure that we're having a collision down in there and putting bodies on guys.
Coach, we appreciate your time. Good luck tomorrow night, and I hope you enjoy a little reunion back in Omaha that you're having here.
Thanks for sneaking us in, Coach.
Great to be back. Thank you.
Appreciate it. That is Coach Darian DeVries of Drake. Obviously, we'll be rooting for the Bulldogs tomorrow night here in Omaha.
Gonna have his hands full with Isaac Jones and Miles Price. Price is ultra quick.
They're gonna have their hands full with Tucker.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
We will wrap up the show coming up next and hop back into the discussion about Nebraska and their new athletic director here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We are also on KFOR in Lincoln, live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, where it's at least 10 times better to watch us than it is anything else this morning. And we are, of course, live from the Pillar Exterior stage, where we read you the breaking news of Nebraska hiring on a 6-year deal, Washington Athletic Director Troy Dannon. Good news, though, guys.
What?
Trev thinks it was a good hire, so stop tweeting, you weirdo. What's happening?
We needed to do something.
It is too early to be drunk tweeting, Trev.
I'm just telling you, there's no way he's running his own Twitter account.
If he is, he needs to go find whoever hacked his password and be like, bruh, you're making me look like a clown.
Congratulations, Troy.
Does he even Northern Iowa? Is that do they even know each other? He at least knew Dennis.
Everybody.
And that could have been a text that he sent.
Stop it.
You can't just when Matt Rule makes a bowl game, he's gonna be like, congrats, Matt. Appreciate you. So excited for Nebraska in the college football playoff in 2025. At what point does it end?
A lot of the great ones don't have a whole lot of hobbies.
His hobby is apparently just tweeting at Nebraska now.
Oh,
Trevor, get a hold of yourself.
Matt, I just want to thank you.
Get a hold of yourself, you clown show.
It's an awful quick athletic director hire. Isn't it?
I don't know. Is it?
Kinda.
And that's
totally on me. Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Because I asked this the other day. I think it was either to Samuel McAweewan or somebody smart. All right. But let me ask you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the president, the incoming president coming into the University of Nebraska.
Of the United States?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You sound like Zoe yesterday. She's like, I was on Bluetooth and we were talking about the president to somebody. And she goes, we're getting a new president?
Well, in a few months, maybe. Who knows?
Be quiet, Zoe. Daddy's talking business.
The adults are speaking.
That's the downside of Bluetooth. I figured the conversation would be above her head, but she can figure out president pretty easily.
It sounds like she's a little bit more self-aware than Trev is the last few days on Twitter, at least.
Stop it, young Ravi Lulla.
Everybody.
Sorry, continue. You're asking a question.
If you're the president coming in, you're looking at admissions reductions. You're looking at fiscal budget constraints. You're looking at trying to meet budget. You know the topsy-turviness of the president position over the last handful of years. Do you look at the institution known as Nebraska football and that athletic department? Are you like, thank goodness, or are you like, that's intimidating? I'm an academic guy. We need some checks and balances. Like, how are you looking at that as a strength or something that you're intimidated by?
I look at it as a strength, but that's my personality. If I'm a leader of an academic institution, which is that's what the background of most of these presidential.
Is that not a viable question for the new president?
No, it 100% is. But I think if you don't view it as an asset, you are disqualifying yourself from being the president of the University of Nebraska.
Well,
is that fair?
But I do think that's been part of the
problem. It's a fair question for sure.
It's been part
especially when you've got people that are lifelong academics, right? I think it's hard for some of them to put their compartmentalization hat on. Yeah, ego's fine. Put their ego aside and say, hey, at this particular place, the athletic department carries as much weight as the academic institution does. That's maybe more. And that's just the case here. But if you don't view it as an advantage, then I don't know that you're qualified, no matter what else your resume says. I don't know that you're qualified to be the president here, because you mentioned all of the challenges that the University of Nebraska as an academic institution has been facing,
which is not unlike a lot of other
very common.
Yeah,
and especially in the last 5 years post COVID, things have gotten a little squirrely.
Correct.
In terms of enrollment and
student debt,
student debt, everything, all the finances of going to college have been under a microscope, right? And so if you don't look at a place where you don't really have to give a single dollar of academic money to sports,
and in turn you get some.
Yes, right? If you don't, like, Nebraska football bankrolls other things out, not just in the athletic department, but in the institution at large, right? So if you can't view that as a positive, you are not qualified to work here. And that sounds dramatic, but it's the absolute truth. Nebraska football elevates the entire institution. And if you sit there and be like, well, why aren't people talking about UNMC? Or why aren't people talking about our law program? Or why aren't people But guess what? They're not on national TV every Saturday.
I don't know, Ravi. It sounds good.
No, I get what you're saying, because I think there's
I only asked the question because it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
Like there's been a rub.
Well, that's because you have to ask that question before you hire them. That needs to be a deal breaker question.
That sounds like Thursday's show.
As part of the process.
Last Thursday's show.
Yeah.
And Friday.
In figuring out, hey, where is our vision? Where are our priorities? Because Nebraska football.
You called that a rant. Were you actually on board?
Just because it's a rant doesn't mean it's not true. Rant is about tone to me, not about content. Lots of rants are true. It's just the stylistic.
You want a solution? Here's a solution. This is what you got to do.
Yeah, that's a rant. You might be right.
That's kind of how I said it, too.
Being on a rant doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you're delivering it in a certain way.
I just seen it from all angles, right? I mean,
that has to be a deal breaker question as you're talking to presidential candidates is how do you view the relationship between the Nebraska athletic department
I think
and the
some
rest
people
of the
are
institution?
intimidated. And remember,
it's a unique situation.
And I brought this up. I just think institutions and athletic departments running afoul independent of one another is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It has been a problem over the last handful of years. Remember during COVID and Minnesota wanted to get it under control.
Mm-hmm.
We're an academic institution first and student first. And Michigan said the same thing. Those voices were coming from the presidents.
Yeah, that's not coming from the athletic department.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and Nebraska is even more uniquely equipped because it is the playa.
Yeah.
On a university campus.
Like, and it prints money in a way that most athletic departments don't.
Yeah, they're the big players. So how you view that as an ally or an adversary, I think has been to the detriment of Nebraska going forward. And I think it's a huge reason why the big three of athletics, the president and the chancellors, have not seen eye to eye. And like, are we going to act like Hank Bounds didn't leave?
He did.
Right?
Yeah.
So we conveniently leave him out, even though
he was the first one?
Yeah, people have varying opinions. How he fit within that infrastructure is something different than what I think individually he brings to the table.
I think if you are, and maybe part of this,
we know it's well documented with Harvey Perlman, right? We
buried the regents a little bit last week. You pushed back on it, which I think was fair. But if you're in a position of being a regent in the sense of,
I push back on the broad stroke bearing of the regents.
So, but my point is, if you're a regent, which means one of your primary goals, this is literally on the website for the University of Nebraska Regents, one of your primary goals is to select a president. If you don't have the criteria that I just set out in your mind, you probably are not a good fit as a regent either.
Yeah,
understanding.
So how fair? So let's say you're right, because right now
I am.
Yeah, right now you haven't told a fib.
Yeah.
So if you're a regent and that's part of your that's part of your responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see what I was saying last week? How they did Nebraska a solid in tweaking the process and allowing the the direct reporting of presidents and athletics. So again, I'm going to eat the meat and spit out the bones.
Mhm.
Can you want some regions to do some things differently?
Mhm.
Has it been a much politicized position?
Mhm.
Sure. But let's not act like they haven't tried in some vein to work to the best interest of the university.
Yeah.
Because they made some concessions.
Which the best interest of football, the best interest of the athletic department is in the best interest of the university.
Well, we heard two smart people, BC and Sam,
Mhm.
both say, well, sometimes it's about the person. I get it,
Mhm.
but it cost them. They had their hands slapped.
Yeah.
Basing it on
Can't base
on the individual person.
You cannot base structural changes on individuals because then you will get in trouble. That's how I mean,
because people move too much.
Not just people move. People move.
And it promotes volatility too.
It promotes volatility,
Lack
but
of
also
consistency.
if you get the wrong person in that role, you are in deep.
Now, this is assuming you make the concessions after you get to know the person, right?
Yes.
Because Ted Carter and Trev would have been uniquely aligned to have a president AD reporting relationship.
But
not everybody's going to be uniquely equipped like that.
But if they made that decision because of Ted Carter and Trev Alberts, because they're like, oh, these guys are lifers or whatever, or if this is the situation, we'll be in great shape. That's a dangerous thing to do based on personalities rather than structurally. I think this is what's best for the university. They may have gotten it right on accident, but their reasoning is dangerous.
Yeah, based on his ability and his fundraising history, this may be actually a school first hire.
Troy Dannon?
Yeah.
Hey, Nebraska football.
I got to get into it more.
Nebraska football first is University of Nebraska first. That's my point.
Wow.
And that's what the new president needs to be doing. Maybe we'll get a name on that at some point today, too. Who knows? I guess it's News Dump Wednesday here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.